Hello, welcome to the Node.js Community Benchmarking Meeting for January 29th, 2018. We're going to follow the standard agenda today, and that includes announcements. Are there any announcements from anybody in the team? I think the only one I guess I'll mention is in terms, and I guess it's on our agenda as well, but the benchmarking survey closes end of this month, which is only, I think, 2 days away now. So if you have anybody to encourage to complete it, go ahead. But otherwise, we'll have the full data from there, and Dan's going to give us an update on the data we have so far in this meeting. So moving on to the items tagged for the agenda. The first one is 189, which is add Ghost workload to the benchmarking suite. Just opening that up. I think, Udam, you've been working on that one, right?
Satvik, let me ask, is Satvik online? Okay. So I have a colleague, Satvik, who was working on it. He has created all the scripts,
right,
including the run jobs and CI job scripts. I just need a way to test it. I remember a few steps what I did while I did the Node.js workload. But when I go there now to the Jenkins machine, I don't see the way to run this one. So if you can help me out after the meeting, or maybe we can set up a time.
Sure. Oh, there he is right there. But yeah, yep, we can set up a time or set up a job so you can do that.
Yeah. But Satvik is here, so let's ask. Satvik, do you want to update on Ghost?
Yeah. Can you actually hear me? Because I tried joining from my laptop.
Yeah, we can hear.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I have been adding an initial version of the script to automate the run. So I haven't sent a pull request yet. It's on my branch currently. But the pre-requirement is that the system must be running the Docker service already, and the Docker should also be configured to download an image, because it requires the MySQL image to run the benchmark.
Right. I guess none of the other ones require Docker. But maybe that's something
for Acme Air. So I thought maybe.
That was just added as an easy way. Gareth put that together on request for somebody as an easy way to get it started.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Been touched since, but unfortunately. But, yeah.
I mean, the question in the other ones, the single script manages to pin things to different CPUs. Is there a way to do that with Docker too?
Yeah, there is a command called CPU set -CPUs, and you can specify the CPUs. But when you start the Docker service, there's no way to restrict the Docker service itself from running to certain CPUs. At least not
right. Okay, so it might interfere, you mean, with the other.
Yeah, exactly. So before this script is run, you will probably have to like start the Docker service and then stop the Docker service before you run other benchmarks.
Okay. And you're not worried that
I don't think it will interfere. Yeah, but I'm not sure.
Right. How do you? Yeah. I guess you have commands in your script to start and stop it.
No, I haven't actually added those two commands. It's basically going to be just service Docker start and service Docker
stop. Okay.
Docker stop. Yeah.
Okay.
So
and the Docker images are. Go ahead.
If you remember last meeting, we talked about that the Ghost has a requirement of a MySQL database.
Yep.
So we don't have MySQL installed on our benchmarking machine. So we said if it could be a Docker image, then it would be easier. And that's why Satvik has been working to kind of integrate Docker environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's just the standard SQL image, like. So we're pulling from a standard location, because I mean that does sound good. So is there any? My one question on that one would be, would that image ever change on us without us knowing?
I don't think so. It's going. I have you can suffix the image version, and I have set it to 5.7 dot something.
Okay.
5 point, and it's going to stay the same.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I think in general, the more we're going to run into more and more of these cases where having a Docker container would probably make sense. So we'll just have to install Docker on the benchmark machine, which isn't hard. It's just another package, so that's not really a big deal. I don't think, as long as you're right, we get the start and stop, I think would be a good thing, just to make sure that until we're comfortable it won't interfere. It only affects that one.
Yeah, and one
So
I think reason is you need the sudo access, I think, to start the Docker container. So that one thing needs to be configured.
That will be more of a challenge, because the IOGS user that the runs from Jenkins doesn't have sudo access, and I don't think we'd want to generally give it a sudo access either.
I mean, when you configure Docker, you can add the Jenkins user as to the Docker group.
Right. Yeah. So if we did something like that, that would make more sense.
Yeah, and then you'd have to I can send a link on the instructions.
Right.
And then you have to restart the Docker service for it to apply.
Right.
But yeah, I wouldn't be able to start and stop the service without sudo access.
Yeah.
Right.
We could always just add the services, so you can run sudo service start or whatever. So you could have it so Jenkins user can use sudo to run services, but it can't do it to remove files or any other bits and pieces that we may not want to accidentally sneak away. So you can just the sudo's file.
Yeah. How tightly can it be? Like, could it say to start just the Docker service?
Not sure. Normally, it's just you restrict. You say this command you can run, or any user can sudo. You can only use this service wrapper.
Yeah. Right. So it'd be service start. Okay. Well, that's worth playing around with, because if it could be limited to just that one, it would be good.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the other thing that we've got to remember, well, yeah. The only way of some potentially malicious, well, famous last word. No, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and I'm just thinking we have the one machine, we'd like to actually run it on a bunch of them. Eventually, it's not just one machine where this could happen, it's several. So the more we could make it so that we're not giving privileges to the IOGS user, the better, I think. It's even, I don't know, we might come up with something where there's something listening on the machine that says start and stop. Like you could make a request to something that is running as root that says start and stop Docker.
I suppose do you know if it's using systemd or the other, when using initd? Because I think if it's using initd, you might even be able to restrict it specifically to the script. If it's systemd, I don't know. I've not got as much experience on that, so I'd have to.
Right.
But I don't know. It's something to invest.
It's in Ubuntu 14, so whatever it's using.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably something worth investigating, because I'm sure there's going to be other things that come along that we think, oh yeah, it'd be useful to have that, and Docker is probably a good way to go down that track, I suppose.
Right. I'm just taking a few notes. Giving to privilege.
Satvik, do you want to talk about another requirement of Yarn? Because that's not the default npm install type. It's apt-get install.
No. So to get around that, there is another script which I don't know. You could call it before this main script starts, which is called download yarn.
But is it
So it is going to download the YARN binary.
install?
Yeah, it's just going to download the binary for a Debian system, and it's set to a specific version of YARN as well. So
Basically,
they don't
it's
have to
gonna-
make any more changes to the system. Yeah, to download like apt install YARN is not needed now.
And it needs YARN because this is NPM.
When they upgraded the version of Ghost, they moved
Right.
from NPM to YARN because YARN has more flexibility in saying to ignore specific versions of the modules and continue the installation.
Okay.
Faster, actually, it does things in like 36 seconds as opposed to 2-3 minutes.
So, but yeah, it can all be done by the script and then erased at the end, right?
Yeah, that's how it's done right now.
Yep, sounds good. Okay, I did see there was some discussion about some issues or whatever. Was there something else there that we should talk about too?
Yeah, so currently the way the scripts are written, everything starts in background, the processes.
Right.
And I was thinking of adding a timeout so the machine won't get stuck with this script. But when the timeout expires, all these other scripts, like which will parse the output to utilization and node utilization and report the total numbers. If those files are not created, grep hangs because it keeps looking
Right.
for those non-existent files.
Right.
And that's there in 2 or 3 scripts that's already being used in Acme Air and in Node.js as well.
Is there any reason why those whiles couldn't check for another file you could run as part of the time? You know, basically it could be if this timeout file exists or the file you're looking for quit.
Mm-hmm.
Would that work? Or do you have a better way of doing it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. One way is to just get the PID of the background process that you started and kill that PID.
Okay.
Start every grep command with the like you can write timeout, the timeout number of seconds, and then the grep command. So the timeout after those many seconds.
So is there one you're like, which way do you think is the best way to go?
I'm not very sure. I haven't written a lot of these scripts. Going through the Stack Overflow, most people prefer the getting just the PID of those background processes that have launched and killing those PIDs.
Yeah, that sounds the cleanest to me. As long as the kill will always kill them, then that's a pretty good way of doing it.
Yeah, I think I'll go with that.
So I'm going to say you're going to Satvik will look at your Satvik will look at adding logic that gets PIDs and kills as part of the timeout. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea for sure.
Yeah.
There was one more issue I think I talked about as a last comment, Mike. So there were 2 versions for the Ghost right now. One is pre-LTS or older LTS 0.11, and the latest LTS is version 1. There's quite a big difference between the performance when we look at the numbers here. The current supported LTS is 1.17, and that's the best way to just use the latest version and not worry about the 0.11, even if there is a performance difference. And that difference could be because of the benchmark changes, not necessarily the node or any other changes. So what's our group decision? Is it okay to just use the latest LTS?
There was some challenge with it, right? Wasn't there? Or
there is a way to get around it, and Satvik can talk more about it.
Because that's all I remember about the discussion.
Yeah, Gareth had proposed having both versions. because he didn't want Node community to be confused about which version did we get the speed up from.
Yeah, so I think wasn't their most recent LTS version didn't support anything above Node 4 or something like that?
Yeah, it won't support anything earlier than Node 6.
Oh, it won't support anything earlier. Okay.
So the latest only supports Node.js 6.xn later.
Yeah.
You know, Node 4 is fairly close to going out of service. My feel is that I'd be fine if we just enabled it for 6x and later.
Satvik, I remember you said it is a problem with the npm install itself and not the npm install and not the node itself.
Yeah, I got around it. The thing is, with the latest version, it works fine on Node 8, but you still need that yarn ignore engines flag option to make sure the installation goes through. And with the earlier version to get it working on the later versions, I have another logic in the script which will delete the node modules folder, upgrade the there is a required dir node module which a later version of it was released, and I'm upgrading the version and reinstalling npm. So from the script's point of view, both the versions will work fine. But for the graph generation logic, I have added only one JSON and 4 directories. So if you are going to support both the versions, you will have 8 directories added and 8 graphs as well, which can be very confusing to look at, right?
Yeah. I mean, and they're two different things, right?
Yeah, and even the performance delta is different. You get a much bigger speed up with the latest version of Node going from 6 with the newer version than with the older version.
I think I'd vote for just doing the latest one. Does anybody object to that, or think we should do both?
Gareth, what do you think?
I can remember the conversation, and I'm probably going to need to go back and just to remind myself of the whole story. Yeah, I mean, from what you're saying, it doesn't seem to make much sense to go with the older version, but I seem to remember there being some reason why it would make perfect sense to include the older version as well. I'll need to go through old recordings or whatever just to remind myself. But I mean, yeah, I mean, from what you're saying, it certainly sounds like the new version is the way forward, and I seem to remember there being some downside to the new version, but I can't remember what that was.
Wasn't there something like the new version of Ghost was still under development or wasn't necessarily as performant as the older one?
It could well have been. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I say I can't quite remember what the.
Yeah, there is a big performance data. Yeah, Satvik, you can talk about the performance, what you found, right?
I don't remember quite off the top of my head. I can add it to the same GitHub issue. But yeah, the newer version is not as performant as the older one. It is a lot slower. But my idea is that the newer version does use a lot of the ES6 features. So it will be a good to test out any changes you are making to speed up ES6 features.
Yeah, we do want more coverage of testing of those features.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go with the newer one for now. And if needed, you can always add the old one without any problem. Just the graph generation logic, those four additional directories would need to be created. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I say it'd be good to start getting some numbers, and then we can yeah, see where we are. And
Okay. Any more discussion on that side? I see. I guess not. I see that I actually did them in the wrong order. And the first one was 189. So I'll go back to that one, which then basically you were going to give us a summary of the benchmarking survey results so far that we're going to share with the user feedback group as well, right?
That's right. So I dive into that?
Yes.
Awesome. So, hi everybody, Disha. You probably know me from the internet and all Node.js things. Today I'm here to represent the user feedback initiative inside of the community committee, ComCom. This was one of our sort of kickoff projects. End of last year, there was a real opportunity to connect some of the dots into the project and bring in attention from the external user community. We needed some tangible things to work on. And Michael had a request out to the community committee. We've worked with the foundation. So Greg Wallace of the Node.js Foundation helped us set up the survey with the same infrastructure that they use for their annual user survey and plugged in that data. So I posted a couple links in our chat. I'm not posting them to the meeting because it contains an internal link that is for your eyes only, and I've posted the tracking issue to the user feedback group. The
tracking issue is okay to go in the minutes.
Tracking issue is fine to go in the minutes. There's nothing there sensitive, and there's not really anything sensitive in the SurveyMonkey results. We're just starting collecting and sharing user data. We're trying to be sensitive to unknowns where we may not know in the data some folks may be sharing identifiable information that we will want to sanitize in the final results. But our objective is to, like any other aspect of the Node project, to produce them. Oh, Benedict, I saw you've been bouncing in and out. 1 second, let me share that with you. So this is the overview of the results, and we will be finalizing the results on Wednesday. So we're going to wrap up the survey on Wednesday. So I think I'm comfortable sharing the page. It seems okay. All right, let me go and just pull this up so we're all sharing the same context as I go through this.
Right. That way the people watching can see it too. So that's good.
Yeah, so we're talking about something completely unknown. Here we are. The overview. We had really solid turnout. So we've been running this for about a month, and had over 270 responses. And running the gamut of sizes. Looks like we have a lot of individuals with smaller applications, and then representative samples of some folks with some really big installations. So kind of matching the expected spectrum of use cases. That kind of level sets where folks are. Looks like we have continued aggressive adoption of our latest LTS. That trend continues to be impressive. How folks are staying on our LTS, but are staying on the latest and greatest LTS.
Yeah, that's very good to see.
Right. Yeah, I'm impressed. That's been corroborated in several different surveys. I know the node source node by numbers. We saw that trend where the uptake of our latest LTS has been strong. And the next question is, if you aren't on there, how fast are you going? And everybody looks like they're really moving aggressively to our latest LTS. And we'll get some perspective on the use cases we're testing. The services and backend microservices, which was kind of the initial hypothesis around the benchmarking working group, right? When Acme Air was introduced, the API services were one of the primary use cases, and that continues to be the trend for Node and feedback from our end users. 5 node modules. This was a hard question. We get a lot of kind of pushback on this one. From Greg in terms of like coaxing us to improve how we were articulating this one, and it looks like that one's going to be an interesting one to interpret.
Well, I think that one we just have to take the data
and pick it apart, right?
And yeah, exactly. Like what I'd do is I'd look at it and say, well, which modules were the most common? Like if there are 73 respondents and they all had one module as their top one, then that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Probably won't be quite that clear, but I don't think it should be too hard to grab that into something that says, of the total list, here's the top 5 and how many each like, and they reported by being used by these number of people.
Yep. So, we got feedback that, this sort of question, if we can make it more deterministic in the future, it's better. But, our response there is we don't really want to make it deterministic. We want, a sample of data. The survey model.
Ben,
what's that?
What exactly do you mean by more deterministic?
Fitting into the aggregation that that SurveyMonkey does automatically, right?
Okay, so you just want to remove this manual work that you need to do now, or that we have to do now.
That's right. We have to go back and do subsequent analysis, which will be we can make deterministic, but it's the disconnect between the survey model and your ready ability to use the data.
I think it would have been, if we had like a list of 100 modules, mm-hmm. then it would have been easy because the tool would have generated us the data, right? But
right.
So I think that's the difference.
Right. Is there something that someone wanted to add to that?
I think I was just having some problems there, so might have caused some noise. So cool. Feel free to move on.
No problem. So that's going to be an interesting data point, and this is the first time we've run the survey, so we may want to choose to adjust that, or we may find better benefit in this broader sampling approach. So big spread on whether folks have anything in place. Kind of split down the middle, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 across. Are folks doing it? Do folks have it? Are folks wanting to have it in place? And do folks completely not have anything? And that was the infrastructure for tracking performance. Some details there on how folks are actually implementing that. We'll have to go pull that data. Everybody who's on, make sure you sort of grab a copy of the link. If you're interested in coming back to it, you can also go and dig down in some of the data for the benchmarking team. Most folks have moved into ES6 land. That sort of matches my experience in speaking with folks. Surprising amount of folks having minification in their stack. That surprised me. Lots of bundling.
Yeah, especially bundling.
Right. Web packing or ilk, all of the things. It's definitely a big use case.
Even the obfuscation was a surprise to me, like that it's that high.
Right.
Maybe that'd be an interesting benchmark to try and.
We're already getting meta. Folks are not experiencing performance regressions, which is amazing, and I think that matches my expectation for the responses here. But that is fantastic to see that corroborated.
It's still 10% though, which is not a trivial amount,
right?
Well, it's only 10%. So
yeah,
given that given just looking at V8 and how many revisions of V8 you have in a single node upgrade, it's pretty surprising that only 10% of the people have ever seen any performance regressions.
So
yeah, okay. I mean, I guess it's like we hope that very few people see performance regressions. So it'd be at least to me that's a high enough number that it's interesting to dig into like the from. We'll have I guess we only have 7 responses on like the from and to, but
right.
So if you ask the same question here for Chrome, I'm pretty sure you will get like a higher number of people saying yes.
Yes, and then they're fixed afterwards, or
well, Chrome. That's the thing with Chrome. You only need to wait 6 weeks in the worst case, and then it's fixed usually. Right.
Versus, like, I guess it's interesting to me anyway, we can dig in when we have the final results, but kind of like 10% is big enough that if 1 in 10 people in every version have a problem, it seems like we could try and do better, or like it's 1 in 10 people notice something we haven't noticed through our own testing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
it would be useful to know what use case. It could be server-side rendering, for example, which we don't track or we don't have a lot of insight into, or something like that.
Exactly. So maybe there's a follow-on set of questions there that would target this specific area. But anyway, I think that
it'd be interesting to see how those answers, sort of the yes, we've seen performance regressions, map into the ones who actually reported they were doing some sort of performance monitoring.
Mm.
No, I guess we did. This is
60-odd%.
Whether it's a gut feeling or whether it's real.
Yeah.
This was kind of an interesting comment. The disabling of snapshotting.
Yep.
Because that one was one we knew about.
That was a security fix, so not much we could do.
No, so I mean, at least that one you say, okay, it happened. We knew about it. It was resolved. And 7 to 8, that might have been in a similar time frame. Okay.
Yep.
Well, and 7 to 8 might have been just some crankshaft script.
Okay.
That wasn't handled initially in 8.
Right. Okay.
And something we might want to do in the future. So my answer would be, have I seen performance regressions in any release of Node? Yeah, I've been using Node, since early days, and definitely have seen that. But if we're really talking about Node, version 4 plus, then we might want to qualify that as we go forward. So we're focusing our sample set on the current state of Node.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. All right, let's move on. That was fun. Yep. So do you report them? No, or we don't know? That's a great question, by the way. Not great answer, but it's really bad.
Yeah, I think we don't know, and we don't know. It's like, so that one clearly says we've got something to do in terms of communicating you have a performance regression. What do we want people to do?
Yep.
But only 10% of people had performance regressions in the previous chart.
True,
so
true.
They could be that yellow bar down here.
Like security, there's really only the edge. The chances are that you're not going to encounter a security issue, but knowing that you can go to the security working group and report an issue, and you have a way to disclose that, I think that's an important way for folks to use that. It'll also enhance their awareness that this group is a thing, right? The benchmarking is a thing that we're actively engaged in the process of maintaining and improving our performance.
Yeah, so maybe I'm going to open an issue right now, which is basically, figure out what we should do on this front.
Yeah, maybe just put a link on the website somewhere saying report issue.
Yep.
Is there something like report issue at all on Node.js.org?
Well, I don't think I've seen something like that. Like for security, there's an email. You can, send an email to a particular address to report something, or you can open an issue, right?
Well, okay, but security is very special. So
right.
What if something just breaks performance-wise or whatever, stability-wise? No, maybe it wouldn't hurt to have a link on the web page.
Yep.
Yeah, you mean on the main website, right?
On Node.js.org, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like report issue. Oh wait, there is report. Okay, but that's not easy to find. Report Node.js issue.
Yeah, and that's probably just fairly generic too, right?
Yeah, and then you just end up on GitHub. Yeah.
Oh, we can add link to the benchmarking page also. People, if they say, oh, there is a performance, they go benchmarking side. Hopefully they are tracking, looking at that page, and they, most of the workloads we track, they don't see regression, but here is the link if you do see any issue. So
yeah, possibly adding an alias, email alias, even if, because if it's people who like opening up GitHub issues is not natural.
Right.
Yeah. Could also be a naming thing. If you hear benchmarking, you don't immediately think, oh, that's where I'd go to report my own performance issues. Whereas if this was like the performance working group, then maybe that is.
Right.
Good point.
Yes. Yeah. Communication, publication.
So as Michael's filling that in, I'll continue with some of the questions. This one's going to be fun. How do you write asynchronous code? And it is the callbacks losing and promises and async await just tearing through everything. So that'll be a fun fodder for opinioneers.
I have one comment about that.
Please. Yes.
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
Our workloads we have on the benchmarking, most of them are either use callbacks or promises, right? We don't have like Node.js, for example, definitely doesn't have the async await. Should we take an action item where see whether we can convert them or add another use case to use those async await, and people can see, let's say, Node.js with the callbacks and this new feature, how does the performance looks like?
Uttam, I think that's a fantastic takeaway. Everybody that I've been talking to lately is in the process of migrating their code base to be more async await-y. If folks can get feedback that they're heading in the right direction, this is going to be a performant path. I know that they'll enjoy it. And from chatting with Benedict, the more that we put pressure on that, the more that.
Yeah, I mean, I think since you guys put together DCIS, if you're in a position to basically port it over to async await, it'd be really good from two perspectives. One's the comparison. We could have them both running and you could see how they compare. But then two, it would give us, coverage on async await, making sure we don't regress anything there as well. So yeah, it'd be really good.
Okay.
And there's one final note on that. I've been talking to the Happy maintainer, so Jörn Hammer, and he also wants to, for his own purpose, already have a benchmark. Happy's version 17 is async await only, So it doesn't use any callbacks except to talk to Node. And even internally, it's just using async functions, nothing else. And we could also have this workload running because, it's also a pretty important framework still.
Yep. Yeah, again, it would be good because it covers Happy and because it would give us more coverage of the async await.
So that's version 17?
Version 17, yes.
Awesome.
It's faster than version 16, by the way, because he got rid of a lot of closures that he doesn't need.
Nice. So, what do folks think is the biggest impact on their performance? Most people don't know or not sure. And then the require module loader syntax being number one. I think that is likely an incorrect response, since it would only really impact startup time, not performance. But interesting response there.
Well, startup can be important depending on your use case, right? Like if you're starting up, shutting down, it could dominate your performance. But that may be an artifact of when you give a list, people will tend to choose that list, right?
Right.
In the write-in answers, a couple people also call out startup time, so they did think that was important.
Right.
This will bootstrap, right? Well, that would be the require stack. Overview of some tools that those are deep dive command line options that folks are using. It's worth a deep dive there. So single threaded, our folks, being blocked by that, vast majority, so 3/4 are saying that Node's single threaded nature is not blocking their use case, and there are some that are.
And that still surprises me that it's that high, 25%.
So this matches sort of social discussions that I have, where I think folks are not using Node because they've been told that computational workloads don't work with Node, and they're following that assumption. Not that they don't know how to, and I think it's that they don't know how to use computational workloads in Node. Does that make sense?
But sorry, I guess I'm not quite understanding what you're trying to get at. Like, is it that you think they could but don't know how, or is it that they? Okay.
In my experience in building out Node systems around computational workload and server side rendering is an example of it. It's an architectural shift that you need to do, and if you haven't learned how to separate the service workers and processes around Node, then it's going to be painful.
Right, if you don't know how to split it out properly. But I guess that still might be a sign of, is it that the tools are good enough, but people just don't know them, or that if the tools were better, more people could more easily use them? I don't know.
Yep. I'm not sure. But definitely, clear indications that the reason people aren't doing that is because of computation.
Right.
Worker model. Again, looks like folks are interested in the worker model. It's good. I agree with that. Is startup time an important use case? Big split down the middle.
Whoa, 40%. Over 40. Whoa.
So yes and no. Very interesting to see that, and I would expect that to become as serverless workloads grow. That's where the most acute pain is seen with that.
Right. So basically, this one comment is that they've got a whole pile of them going, and they go down. So they needed to start up quickly.
Which is the same for serverless, right? Except that you also have npm install, then
right.
No.
Garbage collection and optimizer pause for your application. Yeah, a lot of no, and a little bit of yes. I imagine there's a fair amount of awareness gap there.
Probably, yeah. But if people really had trouble with that, they would know.
Right.
Yeah.
There's 18 milliseconds, 80 milliseconds, a couple of seconds. Yeah. So the folks that have seen it, they really know.
Yeah, the second ones are definitely non-trivial.
Yeah, exactly. So pretty reasonable split across CPU and memory efficiency. A little bit more on the memory, the CPU. Sorry.
Modules. Oh, async iterators is stage 4, so we are done there.
JSON parse.
Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I think that having a blessed option to do streaming parsing, could be interesting.
Yeah, I think you should do a better API, or we should do a better API on the Node side.
Mm-hmm.
We looked into JSON parse end of last year again, and there's not so much we can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that one of the people on my team put together an NPM module, which is like to help you do it asynchronously.
Yeah, in chunks.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, in chunks, so that you don't
Streaming.
block the event loop while you're doing it. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, that's totally the if you have very large blobs that you're dealing with, that's the right approach, and that's the end of the data. That's
so in that case, I guess the detailed data, we can count how many people said each of those, right? Because
right,
like and those, was that a fill-in? Like, or did we give those I guess we didn't give those options, because, or did we? Because I'm just surprised it didn't give us the numbers.
Yep.
Okay. It's just funny that we see now only 5. Oh, okay, there's a whole list. Okay.
Oh, there's
Sorry, we just saw the top of the list.
Scrolling. Hidden scrolling.
Okay. So we'll have to go back and see which one
whatever.
shows up over and over again.
There you go, right? You got all kinds of...
Oh, yeah, now it makes sense to me.
Right. There they all are. Okay. Sorry about that.
It just looks so neat and tidy, that's all.
Right. Yeah, so it's an open-ended question, and everyone gave their individual responses there. All right, so that's the overview. We will close this survey on the 31st. This link I expect to be the final link for you all to be able to access, and we are planning a public user feedback session on Friday, February 9th. Michael, I don't know how you want to handle or engage folks in the working group, but at a high level, everybody's invited, and I'm happy to sort of get a list of names and add everybody to the calendar invite, so everyone has a calendar invite, and we'd love to have you join with representatives from folks who've raised their hand to participate, and they're folks from all over the industry, from PayPal to some folks out of from Ottawa and beyond, that have volunteered and would like to connect, and so we'll begin putting some real faces to some of this data, and you can ask folks directly, and dive deeper into some of these questions on February 9th.
Yeah, so just as some additional context adding to what Dan said is, our plan for the user feedback group is to build this, a group of end users that we can regularly meet with, ask questions, get the insight from their actual use. And this is the first kickoff meeting, so we'll probably start with a bit of an introduction. But then to delve into sort of the first exchange, we thought, well, we have the questions from the benchmarking survey, and the plan would be to walk through them and have the in-person conversation about the questions, where we can, like, when they answer a particular way, we can actually then delve into the details. And I think it'll be interesting just to see, like, can we actually get more new data by doing that versus a survey? And it's something we already have set up, so it's a good way to start with that group. So it would be good to have a number of you guys there as well, to help ask the questions when you hear the answers that they have there. So anybody that can make it, I would encourage you to show up.
So I dropped the link there to the meeting issue. So I'll try to invite everybody, and maybe Michael will send me a link of everybody's addresses. But if you're really interested, please drop your name in there.
I would say, Dan, if you do an at Node.js benchmarking.
Okay, cool.
Right, that should get everybody
great.
In this group, or who's shown interest in the group, to a notification. And
sounds good. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks for the collaboration, and I look forward to if this is valuable, we should probably try to coordinate on an annual basis and get that data. From the feedback from the Node.js Foundation, they it was really after the second, and as you got into the third year, where they really began to see the trends. So keeping this on a regular cadence is really valuable in terms of data collection.
I do think if we think about the data and consume it, we may have another one before then, like with a slightly different focus. But
sounds good.
Yeah, thinking about doing them regularly is a good idea too.
Right.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, so maybe we should move on to the last issue on our agenda, unless anybody else thinks otherwise. Okay, so the last issue is 136. Survey questions for end users to decide what to benchmark. So, okay, so maybe we don't really have, I don't think there's anything else to discuss on that one until the survey closes, so maybe we don't have another issue, which is good. Usually at this point then we'll go into Q&A. There are 5 viewers, so if people have questions, you can put them into the issue, original issue. I will look there, and then I'm going to see if I can actually get back. I was having some issues that might prevent me from, but if I can get to the YouTube admin page. Okay, I want to see my current, okay, community. Okay, channel. I'm not sure how to view the comments. I don't know if anybody else knows how to, like on the actual YouTube channel itself. No, okay. So if anybody does have a question, if you can put it into the issue itself. And I don't see any, so I think that's it for this week. Just as a note, there was some discussion on changing the meeting times in one of the issues, so I've updated the calendar. It's still every 2 weeks, but it's Mondays 1 week, Tuesdays the next week, and at 2 o'clock Eastern, both of those times. So the next one will be 2 weeks from now on Tuesday.
There's one other thing we'd just like to quickly bring up, other business side of things. Yep. Doing some investigations in Crankshaft script, trying to identify and improve it. So Seth's been doing some stuff like that. I'll let him pick up.
Yeah, so a couple of us at Microsoft and a couple others at Google have been working on a blog post recently, basically advocating for people working inside Node.js and inside Node modules to write idiomatic code and complain to the engine if the idiomatic code is not behaving as they expect it to. So just as a kind of notification, so that you're all aware that that is also going on.
So to complain about performance, as opposed to
writing ugly, strange code that happens to work on the current version of the engine, but then means that we have to continue optimizing that particular pattern forevermore.
Right. Current version of the engine. So yeah, I think I guess that flows in with we need to make sure people know where to report things. But
yeah,
so that also
so that's somewhat related. Benedict has also been on these email threads.
Yeah, there's a blog post going up about that soon, and there's been some PRs trying to address some of the existing crank script issues in Node itself.
So there's also the blog post is already out. I just posted the link to the tweet.
Oh, great.
It's already official on the Node.js account.
Very cool.
Okay, here I'm going to add in that link to the minutes. Okay, any other business? If not, we'll talk to you all in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, talk to you guys later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.